Hello and welcome back to Politics Relax podcast. Coming up in today's episode, we talk about whether the coverage of Meghan Markle's kind of whole debacle was racist.
She pissed off to California and then said that she was pissing off to Canada.
We also talk about the path to unlocking, which will be probably out by the time you watch this.
By summer, we should be back to complete normality, no social distancing.
And finally, Matt Hancock breaks the law. Do you not believe that the government should be prosecuted when they break the law? We're going to be giving you all of that in today's episode. Alright, so I want to start with Meghan Markle because over the last few weeks, days, she's been stripped of all of her royal titles, and has basically left the royal family for good. But why she done this is mainly for a lot of reasons. She wants to step back from public life. Is the main reason for doing this. But I think the reason is because the kind of coverage of her kind of royal kind of life has been racist. It's been racist, and it's also been I'd say xenophobic, probably because a bit of the American. I'm sure if Piers was here, that he would say that it's because she was American. I don't think that's the biggest reason, but also because of her status. She's not aristocracy. As I'll start with Cameron.
Well, I don't accept this argument one bit, to be honest. Let's be clear here. Meghan Markle is incredibly unpopular with the media. She's incredibly unpopular, I think, with the majority of this British population. And unless you're going to tell me that the majority of the media are racist and the majority of the British population are racist, there's no way I'll ever accept this argument. The reason that she is so unpopular, I personally dislike her, for example, is actually because she is perhaps one of the worst members of the royal family for decades. She took the spotlight with the royal wedding, becoming a member of the royal family, the first African American woman to be entering the royal family. She took that spotlight. I think she used it. I think she took advantage of it. She then failed to carry out any duties at all. She pissed off to California and then said that she was pissing off to Canada, right? Let's be clear about this. She went straight to California, straight back to America with her prince husband. She didn't carry out any of her royal duties, which I think is an absolute insult to our head of state, the Queen, who has been doing the same job now for 70 or so years, has been actually working really solidly. Being the Queen is not an easy job. The Queen never wanted to be the Queen. Actually, she's been very clear in saying that she didn't want that role. She would have been perfectly happy for, say, Princess Margaret to have it. The crown landed on her head and she had to execute her duties, and she has done that for an admirable length of time. Now, Meghan Markle did have a choice. She did have a choice. She didn't have to enter the royal family. She didn't have to. She knew exactly what she was getting into. She got into it, and then she decided, all right, okay, so I've got the spotlight now. I will go and I will piss off back to California with all the newfound status and money that I've got. And I personally think that is why she is unpopular, not the reasons that you're saying. It's not to do with her race. If you remember, she was very popular before the wedding. Let's remember this.
That's rubbish. That's rubbish, because how do you explain this news title? How Kate scented the Abbey is it's a very positive news article about her amazing section of candles. And then this article about Meghan Markle, I quote, kicking up a stink. Dictatorial bride Meghan wanted air freshener for musty 15th century St. George's Chapel, but the palace said no. How do you explain the difference in those headlines? This is before they got married. How do you explain that?
I don't think I still don't think that's an issue of race.
Oh, come on. You think
we all know that.
Come on. You think that our media is going to go out and start calling her the M word? Of course they're not. It's not that clear cut. But the reason that why is there such a difference between Kate and Meghan in that situation?
Yeah.
the difference is actually that Kate has been an admirable servant and is actually the
Okay, but that's
second most
before.
popular
No. This
member
is
of the royal
before she
family.
married. This is before she married. They talk about her kicking up her
She
stink.
already demonstrated. Now, the reason that Meghan Markle was sometimes criticised in the press before was because Prince Harry became absent as soon as he met Meghan Markle. He became practically absent. She pulled him away from his life.
That's rather sexist.
That is why.
That's rather sexist. Is that so? Is the press coverage dictated by the person they're going to marry?
No, absolutely not.
Oh, then what are you saying?
The problem was with that, with how she then took. She basically, let's be honest, everyone knows Prince Harry is not a very clever guy. I still believe that she took advantage of Prince Harry to construct to grow her own status. And
why
also,
would she leave the royal
Very
family and leave
interesting
public
way.
life if she's trying to grow her own status? That's ridiculous. Or how about
because she didn't want to serve the duties. It's as simple as that. She didn't want to do the work.
Hey,
I'm not surprised she didn't want to do the work, because let's read another great headline. Kate's morning sickness cure. Prince William gifted with an avocado for pregnant Duchess. Meghan Markle's beloved avocado linked to human rights abuse and drought. Millennial shame. How do you explain that? Of course she wants to leave because they're attacking her for eating a bloody avocado. Whereas with Kate, it's like, oh, how amazing! He got him an avocado. That's why she wanted to leave. And
I can't explain that. I can't explain that particular.
I can't explain that. Yeah, because I can. It's racism. It's classism, and it's xenophobia.
No,
Gentlemen, as a person of colour, we know that the media obviously has a problem. But from what I'm seeing, I'm not sure if it's racist. We can't speculate if it's racist because there's no discrimination based on colour as of what we've seen yet. Based on colour, yes, there is a difference in the public, in the way. Yes, there's a difference in the way the media treat Kate and Meghan, but I've not seen a clear indication of whether it's based on colour.
No, it's
unless
not about,
there's
what is it then? I think it's a mix between, because she's not technical aristocracy, it's a bit of her colour, and it's also a bit because she's American. It's those three things that are the difference. Because she's not unpopular with our generation. She's probably the most popular royal with our generation, I'd say.
There's a YouGov poll on this actually. Catherine remains the second most popular royal in this country, and she does that because she does her duties quietly and diligently, and I really like her, as do many, because she is a classic royal.
She's white and
actually,
she's aristocracy and she's white. That's why you like her.
She's not aristocracy. She comes from a middle class background, actually.
Okay, middle class.
She's not aristocracy. Fine. And I would be perfectly happy to accept Meghan Markle if she just done her job. I would totally ignore what the media is saying about.
Okay, can I ask? Then why a person who is best friends with a convicted paedophile who was pictured next to a 17-year-old girl who accused him of sexual assault? I'm talking about Prince Andrew. Why did the media not follow him around and attack him when he eats avocados or when he brings flowers? Should I read you another one about flowers? Why you can always say it with flowers about Kate, whereas for Meghan, royal wedding. How Meghan Markle's flowers have put Prince Charlotte's life at risk. Why is that? Why when Prince Andrew buys some flowers, is he not being attacked by the British media? That contradicts your statement. He's the least popular royal. He's the least popular royal, and he's pictured next to a convicted paedophile.
Yeah, and Prince Andrew has made a big mistake. There's no denying that.
Big mistake. This is not a mistake. This is disgusting. It's not a mistake.
Well, yeah, it is.
He's a disgusting person. He's a disgusting person.
I absolutely agree with you. If we're looking at the difference here is that everyone knows that, so the media don't have to try and milk that. The media have consistently torn into Prince Andrew. There's no doubt about that.
No, but when he buys an avocado, the media are not like always on him.
That's because he's not that relevant. I'm sorry to say.
He's not that relevant.
People who read the newspapers are much more interested in the people closer to the throne.
Oh, are they interested in when Meghan Markle buys a bloody avocado? I bet they're really interested in that. I'm gonna buy the next edition of Hello because they're talking about when Meghan Markle bought an avocado.
I'm not talking about avocados. Okay?
No, but there is a difference. Right, I'm going to go to someone else. I'm
explaining the difference between popularity, for the record. I'm explaining that difference, and why I don't believe it's right.
Okay, Daniel.
Well, I think a lot of the reason why we've had these inflammatory titles of these news articles is because of money. The media only exists to make money for their shareholders and whatever. So I think I don't think it's necessarily racist, but I think that that there's definitely a difference in what they've said with Meghan and Kate. But she has left the royal family, and I think that she's just kind of irrelevant nowadays. I don't think the media should really be focusing on her. She and Harry now should just live their life the way they want to, quietly in America. I don't think really most of the royals are that relevant, except for the Queen. I think we should try and stop making such a big deal about the royals' lives. It's just such an irrelevant thing.
It is. I mean, it is. Tommy.
All right, my internet's been cutting out a little bit, so I apologize in advance if anything's being repeated. But I am anti-royalty, anti-monarchy. I hate all of them equally. I just want to say, apart from the Queen, she hasn't really done anything that bad. Sorry,
I'm gonna have to interrupt here because what have the others done that bad?
It's just a personal preference in the way that things go with the monarchy in history.
That's not fair. That is simply not fair. Just because somebody's born into a family doesn't mean you should hate them. Like I wouldn't call myself the most royalist person of all time, and I'm not very pro monarchy, but I still don't think it's fair to hate them.
Okay, we do not prefer royalty then.
Even still, that's not. All right, carry on.
All right, and I don't think that this is an issue of racism. I simply believe it's the media being the media following relevant stories. Like you did say before, she was married to Prince Harry. There was coverage. I think this.
You've cut out, Cameron.
I think Tommy actually touched on a really good point there. This is the media being the media, and what he means by that is this is the media judging the public mood, and the public mood, let's be clear, is against Meghan Markle, and the reason for
from
that
the very start
is not race.
I agree.
It's not race. It's not race.
No, I don't.
If you're going to, I mean, the reason that the public mood is against Meghan Markle is because she doesn't want to carry out the duties that she signed up to. She knew exactly what she was getting into, and if she didn't want to take on those duties, Harry and Meghan Harry should have left the royal family before he married Meghan. It's as simple as that.
Why? What's the difference? What's the difference between them?
As soon as they got married, they disappeared. They went away.
No difference, though. There's no difference. They've left the royal family now. You've got what you want.
They had the royal
biracial woman at the top of the pyramid has left now. So I hope you're happy.
They had no. I'm not. No, and I don't accept your point about the pyramid. Actually, I really don't. That's just not how our society works in the 21st century.
Yeah, you've just got to blame the media on this one. Honestly, like it all just comes down to it. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm going back to one of the old points, but with Kate, the media didn't attack her because the media would have been attacked themselves by the British public if they said anything about Kate, because the situation about Meghan was a bit, it was neither here nor there. It was a bit tense.
Right. I am going to move on there. I'm going to have to cut out loads of that because that was very heated and long. But we're going to move on now to roadmap. By the time you've seen this episode, Boris Johnson will have set out his roadmap. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about what different people think should happen. I'm happy to talk first unless somebody else would like to start. All right.
Okay. I'll start us off then. I think the government has been focusing a lot on schools. That's something that they've made very clear that they want to get back. Northern Ireland has set in place a 1st of April return, which I think, even under current circumstances, quite optimistic. So I think 8th of March will be an incredibly tough target to pull off, seeing as how schools have been linked with the rise in COVID cases
Actually,
somewhat. They're trying to get teachers vaccinated, and I go on.
actually, like the evidence is that, like according to the science, like schools are not major kind of areas that where COVID spreads compared to like the NHS buses. They're not considered like super spreaders. But carry on.
Yeah, I guess every place could be called then a spreader by that logic. But yeah, I would personally prefer to go back into schools, and I realize that will be entirely possible. It's at a normal rate for quite a while. What I think they're planning to do is a staggered arrival, starting with primary, moving up to secondary. But I would think that a realistic, safe target to get students back to school will be after the Easter break, where we where teachers will be vaccinated as they're setting out to get over 40s by the end of March, and then the rest of the adult population by the end of July. I think that those are great targets to set. It's just to see if the government can meet them. And with the over 40s being vaccinated by the end of March, most children have parents that are around that age. So after the Easter break, we could get a safe return.
Yeah, the science does say though that COVID does not spread as fast. Like in schools, they're not actually like big areas of transmission. That's what the science says at the minute. But I just don't agree with you on that point about like April being optimistic. I don't think April's optimistic actually. I think we're in it. I think the main thing to like kind of push is
I should have specified April 1st was the target, start of April.
okay, yeah. Yeah, I still don't think April is kind of that unreasonable. I think schools have to be the first thing to open. We cannot start opening pubs before we open schools. Like, it cannot happen. Like, that's just ridiculous to me. The schools have to be the main priority, and like we have to do it very slowly and very steadily. And I have to agree with the staggered approach. The staggered approach has to happen. Advice to the government says if we open all schools right away, so like when they're planned to be open, the R rate will rise to over 1, which is a bad thing. Like definitely a bad thing. We do not want the R rate to rise over 1. And the unions for head teachers and for schools have called for a staggered approach. So we have to open gradually. Cameron.
Well, from what I have heard, the announcement tomorrow, we shouldn't really be expecting much information on anything besides schools. It's not going to be the grand roadmap, I think, that some people think it is. And this is just what I've heard from a couple of people. It seems to me as though the main focus is going to be schools, and the very much the preference of the PM and actually of the government is that schools open fully all years back on the 8th of March, and that's an optimistic target and one the scientists are very, very unsure about. I personally wouldn't support that approach if that is what the government are thinking of implementing. I think we need a staggered approach, getting in next year's exam years first. I think that and the young people that of course they really need to be back in school as soon as possible.
Yeah.
On a kind of wider basis, and I don't think, as I say, that the government will announce too much around the economy tomorrow, because I still think it's a bit too early. But thinking ahead, I feel as though, in my personal view, I want us to be properly have reopened our economy by summer. I think that's a very realistic target, and I think we can do that. I'm not saying no regulations at all by summer.
You did say that. You did.
I want us to be ending 2021 with no regulations. That's my aim, having put some thought into this now.
Yeah.
I want us to be ending 2021 with no regulations, but I want our economy to be properly reopened by the summer. And I think we can get to there, because we've now seen that by the end of June, all adults will be vaccinated.
We've seen some very positive things as well on the efficacy of the vaccine and how it stops spreading. I think for one of them it's 80% and the other it's 70%. I want to say, but for both the vaccines, which is a very impressive numbers. And if those turn out to be true, we are in a very good position for Cameron's target of this summer. Daniel, do you want to kind of say what you think should happen, especially on the schools front?
Well, at the moment, the economy is in absolute tatters. I think we're going to see an even worse dip than last year, probably as well. Because of the November lockdown as well, and missing out on Christmas. I think we need to have everything open. Pubs, bars, restaurants, shops open by May, and there needs to be no regulations on how many by winter we should have absolutely no social distancing, because if we were actually told the truth about, for fuck's sake. I'm so sorry.
That is staying in. No.
I'm so sorry.
Winter 2022.
If we were actually told the truth about the vaccine, by summer we should be back to complete normality, no social distancing, because we have been lied to again by its government.
That is a bold claim. That is a very, very bold claim. For no rules, no social distancing. Like, no matter how, if every single person is vaccinating, and even if the efficacy is 70%, I do not think that is even a realistic target. I just don't think that's realistic.
But how do you get out of it? Because the virus is always going to
slow and you sound like Julia Hartley-Brewer.
And we're always going to have this virus. As long as we vaccinate every single person who is vulnerable, we should be out of this by summer.
What you're saying is not particularly reasonable. I think what you're saying is it almost sounds like an Independence Day. We reopen as soon as summer hits. Everyone go out on the streets and celebrate. There's no more virus. That won't be the case. The virus will still be around. It will still be around even when we do get to that stage. But it's important that we get these levels down to as small as possible, and that's why the government are taking a cautious, irreversible approach, which is what the PM's been talking about this week.
And just adding on to that, I don't think probably for at least another few years even, the sort of masks and social distancing will go away completely, because it will always be important to maintain social distancing, where possible. And I always think that's going to be a fair response. And I would support I think you said something about winter. Would that be winter 2022? Daniel?
Winter 2020. Sorry, winter.
Yeah, that's when businesses.
No regulations, no nothing. Because we're always going to have to live with the virus.
I don't think to open everything up by May.
That's what we were promised. We were promised spring, a new outlook on the virus, everything open. That's what Boris has said, and he should keep his word. He lies all the time. He shouldn't lie again. We're going to have to live with this virus. We're going to have to live with this virus. It's better to start it earlier than later.
No, it's not, because you have to get the levels down before you recognise that you can live with it. You have to get the levels down. You have to get the cases down. You can't allow the virus to mutate. We need to get the right percentage of the population vaccinated. These are all factors that have to come into play before you can start talking about living with the virus. I think, and I've said for many months, that we are going to have to live with the virus eventually, but we have to start to see the effects of the measures that we have introduced properly before we do that. Because if we don't, we're still going to get deaths. The virus might be allowed to mutate, and we could be hit by an even more unpredictable situation in the future.
I mean, May, everything open by May. Surely by now you've learned as well not to listen to Boris Johnson. 1 week he's saying we can go outside to go on holiday in summer. And we're going to have a great British summer. Matt Hancock said that. And then the next week, I don't think we should be banking on holidays. So you should learn by now, you cannot predict months in advance with this virus. You do not know what's going to happen the next month. That's just ridiculous. And on the topic of Matt Hancock, this week we learnt that he broke the law. of course, this Tory government are notorious for breaking the law. Proroguing of Parliament was found illegal. So it always seems like our kind of government find themselves in court a lot of the times, and that is public money. This time that went to this £200,000. Even when Matt Hancock admits that he was wrong, he admits that they were 48 days after. No, 48 days instead of the recommended 30. So he did break the law. So why is he spending £200,000 to defend himself when he knows he's broken that law? It's absolutely absurd. And I mean, it's nothing like really unexpected. The PPE has always been dodgy. If I read you a quote from the New York Times investigation into it, $11 billion went to companies that are run by friends or associates of politicians in the Conservative Party or with no prior experience. So it's not surprising at all. It's completely not surprising that this has happened. Also, I saw a pesticide company was made PPE. They gave them £170 million to do that, and then they did not meet the required safety standards. So this government have given out terrible PPE contracts, and alongside with that, they have had this fast track kind of process. So basically, friends of the government are put on a fast track. They're over 10 times more likely. If you're a friend of the government, you're over 10 times more likely than somebody that applied and wasn't a friend of the government to get a contract, even though they're giving them out to pesticide companies. And then £170 million to a pesticide company to make PPE that does not work. That's ridiculous. Cameron.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to talk about the court case. So this week, obviously, we know that Matt Hancock, his department, obviously the Department of Health and Social Care, was found guilty of failing to publish the contracts within the period that you are supposed to. And clearly, obviously, that's unfortunate and it's an error. However,
unfortunate. It's not unfortunate.
Listen,
it's ridiculous.
I can. What the explanation that Matt Hancock has given, I think he's given eloquently, and I think is a realistic and understandable defence, which is that, of course, his team in the department were working flat out. This was at the beginning of the pandemic, flat out to get these contracts signed. And I think it's absolutely right that they were doing that they were prioritising the contracts that would save lives over publishing the contracts, publishing the details of the contracts within a certain period of time. At the end of the day, the details of the contracts have all been published, so they're very open and transparent about that. It's just unfortunate that they weren't published within a certain period. But I don't think it matters whether it's 1 week or the next week. At the end of the day, they have been published, and perhaps if you had that delay in the publishing, lives would have been lost because of that failure to focus on actually acquiring the necessary things like PPE. On the second point that you make about PPE test and trace, those things that you're calling failures, I'm not going to take up a position in which I defend the government on this or criticise them, because I don't actually know enough. I don't have enough information. There's not enough information publicly about the private details of these dealings, and this will come out in an inquiry, and I will make my judgment then.
Oh, okay. Can I just read you a quote from the Good Law Project? They were the team that brought this lawsuit to the High Court, which was won. I'm going to read you a quote from a report from them. Emails read to the High Court yesterday showed that civil servants in the Department for Health and Social Care were asked unlawfully to delay meeting their obligations to publish procurement contracts that meet the convenience of number 10 special advisors. That's from the Good Law Project. So what they have found is that civil servants working for Matt Hancock in the Department of Health and Social Care, they found emails, and I can read you the emails if you really want, of them saying that we are not going to publish this. So unfortunately, Matt Hancock's defense and your defense of him do not stand up to scrutiny when these emails have been found saying that Matt Hancock and his team of advisors delayed the releasing of these contracts because they know they're bogus. 11 million went to friends of the Tory party or people with no prior experience of PPE. That's just ridiculous. And the fact that, like,
in that case, how do you explain the fact that they have been published then?
they have been published, yeah. They have been published, finally. They've been published.
Well, how do you explain that?
How do you explain
that?
How do I explain what? That they've been published?
How does that fit into this view that you are portraying here? How does the fact that they were published fit into that view?
I'll tell you what fits
if he
into
didn't, if he said that they shouldn't be published,
they should be published.
How come they were published?
They were published because
he
eventually
instructed his civil servants to not publish them. How come they were published? And how come actually there hasn't been a big outpour or big outcry about who the contracts were given to?
There has been a big outcry. I don't think you've been listening. I don't think you've been listening because there have been big outcries about the PPE, the dangerous PPE. Like as I read at the start, there was over £100 million worth of contract given to a pesticide company, and then those were returned because if I read you the quote when I get it up in 1 second, here we go. Pest company, they did not meet the safety standards required. Because these are friends of the Tory party that were fast-tracked and 10 times more likely to get a PPE contract. That is just ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. And they have published them, and they published them. And actually, if I read you another quote, it was read out on Andrew Marr today. Because, where has this gone? Here we go. The National Audit Office said that, as I read before, they were 10 times more likely to get a contract than others that applied. These actions diminished public transparency, and the lack of adequate documentation means that we cannot give assurances the government has adequately mitigated the increased risk arising from emergency procurement or applied appropriate commercial practices in all cases. So why are the National Audit Office saying that they did not have enough information? Because obviously, since these have been published, but still, the National Audit Office do not have enough information. How do you explain that? And how do you explain the fact that the Good Law Project have found these emails that say that that civil servants emailed each other saying we're not going to release them? Why?
First of all, I was very clear just a few minutes ago that I'm not going to defend or criticise the government on this because I still don't have sufficient information.
And neither did the Public Audit Office. Why do you not have sufficient information? Because Matt Hancock has broken the law and his advisors have chosen to broken the law. They've chosen to break the law, sorry. That's why you don't have enough information.
They've broken the law by not publishing, but they've broken the law by publishing documents 2 weeks late, but they're still there. They've still been published.
Then why? Then how do you explain the national? How do you explain the National Audit Office saying there was not adequate documentation to scrutinise it?
Do I look like the National Audit Office to you? No, I can't explain. I can't explain. Do I look like the government to you? I can't defend the government on this.
That contradicts
your
point.
I also can't defend the National Audit Office because I don't know how the National Audit Office acquired that or came to that conclusion. I don't know how the government can defend themselves because actually all this is all a matter of the truth, and the truth is built of real information, facts and figures that will come out in an inquiry. And
I've given you facts and figures. I've given you the fact that I've given you facts and figures. I've given you facts and figures, and you have still tried to stick to this, clinging on to what Matt Hancock said earlier. Why don't you just come out and say the government was wrong on this? The government was wrong on this, and they have not published contracts within the required amount of time.
From what I can see, the government were right to delay the publishing of contracts if it meant that they could focus on signing new contracts to make sure that we could get the required levels of PPE to people that need it. Okay. In my opinion, that is right to take priority.
No, I agree if that was actually true, but the Good Law Project, as I read out before, emails to the High Court yesterday showed that civil servants in the Department of Health and Social Care were asked unlawfully to delay meeting the obligations to publish procurement contracts. How do you explain that? How do you explain that if it's just Matt Hancock?
Yeah, and I'm not denying that.
Okay, so then I'm
not denying that. That may well be true. But at the end of the day, I focus on the reality, not these kind of emails or anything like that. I focus on the reality. And if you look at the reality, that these documents have now been published. See, the Good Law Project in this case were a political prosecution, actually. So I find it difficult
This was
necessarily...
evidence. This was evidence submitted to the High Court. I'm pretty sure that will withstand scrutiny when £200,000 of government money have been spent on defending this case, when even Matt Hancock knew that he was not right in this case. So why is that money not gone to the NHS?
What, £200,000?
It's still better than what the why are people like Captain Tom being like having to raise money for the NHS? The NHS is not a charity, and even £200,000 would probably help since this is now a charity. £200,000 to a charity.
200. He spent. Let's be clear here. Actually, let's be clear here. Okay, so Matt Hancock is spending £200,000 of government money defending himself on a pointless trial. Let's be clear, it's pointless.
How is it pointless?
Because it's clear, from what he has said at least, it's clear that the documents have actually been published. So I believe this was a political prosecution just to try and make Matt Hancock look a fool. And
he has looked like a fool. He does look like a fool because he's broken the law.
These contracts have been properly acquired or not.
Do you not believe that the government should be prosecuted when they break the law? Do you believe the government should be prosecuted when they break the law? Yes or no, please? If the government break their law, they should be prosecuted, correct?
Absolutely,
because as Priti Patel says, they should feel, what was it? They should feel like terror, was it? She said that about criminals. So why is Matt Hancock not allowed to feel terror? Is it because he's part of the government?
Yeah, fundamental.
Because the crime that he committed is very, very, very minor. Because the documents were published just a couple of weeks late for the good of the people of this country.
Wasted £200,000 of taxpayer money that he could have avoided. He could have avoided making this mistake. And I agree, it's quite a minor thing. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But he's wasted £200,000 that could have been spent on the NHS or feeding children.
Should I tell you what isn't minor? Should I tell you what isn't minor? I tell you what isn't minor. It's when members of the civil service who are working for Matt Hancock email each other saying that we shouldn't release the contracts. That's ridiculous, and that means that your point does not hold up to any scrutiny, because that is not a minor crime. That is very worrying. Tommy.
Right, that has been a pretty long debate, and I think it's better to put it on a slightly calmer note there. What was said about it's the government defending the government. It is Matt Hancock using the government's money to defend Matt Hancock. It's not a case against the government. It's a case against him.
It is a case.
And I think that the thing that was said about his workers. So that's why it was wrong of him to use the government's money in his own defense case. It's against Matt Hancock, and I think it was wrong of him to use that £200,000, which, like Daniel said, could have been used elsewhere for other needs.
But thank you to everyone for turning up, and thank you for watching.